Now for today, of course, we have an amazing meeting on add-ins. We have 3 great presentations. Michael Kilkelly from ArchSmarter. He's going to talk to us today about a tip on his Revit Toolbox tools. We'll then jump into some add-ins you guys may have seen. Start with Jason Kunkel, who's a CADD Microsystems practice manager. He talks to us about add-ins quite a bit. You may have seen his presentations. In addition, we have Richard Taylor through Ideate. You guys may have seen Richard. He presents quite a bit at all of our conferences, just like Michael and Jason. So go ahead and get started. Now, I will say we do have some areas here to share right here in the center. This is for you guys. Once again, the top here, you can see we want you guys to let us know where you're calling from. We have these pins. Essentially, each kind of color has a different logo on it. It represents different trades, right? I'm kind of BIM IT aligned. So I'm going to grab that box that's most similar, and you can either move it over. You can see we have a bunch on top of each other, or you can right click and you can duplicate that box. We do recommend that you do this for any kind of notes that you'd like to share with us. Maybe you have a favorite add-in that you'd like to tell us about that we're not talking today, or we are talking about today, or if you have any questions for our presenters. Now, if you don't use one of those boxes, it's absolutely fine. You can actually just double click right in Mural to create a note box. Any way that you want to share with us is absolutely fine. We do like to see it by discipline, but if you don't want to do that, or if it's too complicated for you, no problem. Now, we do give a $25 gift card to a winner every month who essentially participated in Mural. This month, we have a winner for Jason Kearns. I'm not sure whether you're with us today, but congratulations, Jason. Somebody from CADD Micro will reach out to you to share that gift card with you. So make sure you participate in the Mural for your chance to win. And it may be something cooler next month. We don't know. We always have random gifts that we're giving away. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right over to Michael. How are you today, Michael?
I'm doing good, Dana. How are you doing?
Doing so well. Thank you so much for joining our group.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Glad we could finally have you. Very excited to see your Revit tools, Revit Toolbox.
I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully you can see my screen. You'll see a picture of me telling you, hi, I'm Michael. So this is my website, ArchSmarter. And again, I'm Michael Kilkelly, trained as an architect, and then just through interest have kind of transitioned myself into a programmer. But one of the things that I've always felt strongly about is this idea of learning in public. So a lot of the stuff that I've developed and the stuff that I'll show you right now as part of the toolbox are tools that I've developed, and then mostly because I was curious about. So I've been, curious about programming, curious about Dynamo, and I would develop these tools as a way to kind of further my knowledge and then put them out in the world and see what happens. So it's kind of an experiment here, but over the years, I've built up a collection. So if you're on archsmarter.com, you can go to Show Me Tools, and the first item right here is Toolbox for Revit. And it's actually, I'll show you it in a second. It's a free library, a free resource library, where I've collected various projects, not projects necessarily, but project tools that I've built over the years. And it's just a quick registration. You can enter your name and your email, and that will give you access to something that looks a little bit like this. So this is the toolbox itself, and there's kind of 4 pieces to it. There's Revit
and these
macros.
Are free, right, Michael?
They are free, yes. Yep.
That's so amazing. What an amazing thing that you've given to the industry.
So there's, we have a collection of Revit macros. I have some Dynamo scripts, Excel templates, and then there's some PDF kind of cheat sheets and guides. So the macros themselves, if you click on here, these are actually, they're not quite add-ins and not quite Dynamo. So macros kind of sit in between between Dynamo and between an add-in. And when I first started getting interested in coding, I started writing macros. And macros are actually embedded inside an RVT file. So if you go here and you download, you can click on the download the macros file, and there's a zip file that contains a whole bunch of RVTs. And there's one for each version of Revit. If you open up that macro file, there we go. It looks kind of like this. And you can go up to manage, and you go to the macro manager, And these are all of the macros that are contained inside the file. So you'll see here, there's tools, add parameters, families, align views, duplicate views. I won't go through all of them, but there's a whole bunch. And again, these are just tools that I've been developed over the years, and mostly because I was curious about, okay, how do I do that using the Revit API? How do I program that? So I put this collection together here. And again, all you have to do is open up this RVT file, and then you can run it on any file that you have in Revit. So for example, if I have, we're just looking at the good old Revit sample file. Once I have that file up, I can go again to Manage, Macro Manager, and I can run, replace font, and it will run it on this specific file. So I just go ahead, I can click Run, and then I select my font, Arial, choose a new font. Let's see what happens here if we do this. I hadn't tested this before, so change it to Arial Black. And it's going to go through and basically, replace all my fonts just like that. So again, macros are kind of that, they're sort of in between. They run fast. They would run faster than a Dynamo script, but they're not exactly an add-in. So they're kind of that in between. So that's available as part of the, let me pull that back up. Here we go. As part of the toolbox. And there's also there's a video here if you want a refresher on how to run a macro. You can take a look at it. Now, as part of the toolbox too, I have a bunch of Dynamo script files that you can download here. There's a zip file in that. And then I went through a period where I got really into Excel. I was like, I didn't know, what is a pivot table? And so I started doing some research into Excel, and then I started programming in Excel. So I have a few Excel templates in here as well, just for good measure. One of them is just an Excel file that has a bunch of Excel formulas, so you can see exactly how they work in practice. And then the other one is this tool that I built that would check out PDFs against DWG files. So it was for a specific project, but it was pretty cool because it would do this file checking operation. So I threw that in there as well. I think it's more good as an example of what you can do in Excel. So this was really an Excel file, but it was also acting as an application. So Excel can do a lot of stuff. You just got to get your hands into it and learn a little bit of VBA. But it's always, it's always fun when you can make Excel do something that you didn't think it could do. So that's in there as well. And then the last bit here are guides and cheat sheets. So I have a Revit template checklist. I have what's called the Path to Revit Mastery. So if you're wondering how to become, we were talking about Star Wars earlier. So if you want to become a Revit Jedi, this is basically some skills that you would need to acquire to get that level of mastery. So definitely take a look at that. So all of these resources are part of the toolbox, and the toolbox is a free download. And you'll also get my weekly Thursday top 5 links from interesting stuff that I find out about AEC that week. So that gets in, that's a free bonus in the toolbox. If going back to the macros, I have a link in here as well about more tools, which is I have an add-in which is called the Smart Pack. So in the Smart Pack, I took the most popular Revit macros and I turned them into an add-in. So that's something that's available. Right now it's available for purchase, but I'm transitioning it over to an open source project. So that's going to happen in the next few weeks. So that will be, in addition to the toolbox, that will be a freely available tool as well.
That is fantastic.
That's my tip.
That is really, really great. We do have a few questions.
Sure.
Any IT or security kind of features that we should worry about when we download macros?
So you will get a notice when you open up the file. You shouldn't have any issues with my macros, but if you think about, in theory, somebody could have a malicious macro in a Revit file. It's kind of like Word macros, Excel macros. The odds are extremely low. I don't think the hacker world is looking at specifically the AEC industry, but you are executing code. So, things can happen. For the most part, though, with macros, they need to be run. They're not necessarily going to run automatically. So you have to actually, purposefully click run
like
And that would be
execute
the
them.
same. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. I also found on Autodesk University your class on creating macros, which I went ahead and linked underneath of your
Cool. Yeah.
getting started with macros on AU 2015. So I'm sure that is a great class, and as well as many other classes that you had. Revit customization for mortals was even a previous one. So make sure you check those out. Thank you so much, Michael.
Welcome. Just one last point. When you do open up a macro file, you will get this security alert. So you have the option to enable or disable macros. So obviously, if you're going to use them, you want to enable it. But if you're not sure, you can click that disable macro button. And then,
great tip.
Yep.
Fantastic. Right. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
And please keep the questions coming from Michael in the chat there. Also shared some information under his little name under the November presentation. And with that, I'll go ahead and come back and share my screen just to show you guys that really quickly. You can see, oh, we had another question added there. I'm sure Michael or myself can get to in a moment. We do have some additional links here that you can get to specifically with what Michael was talking about. In addition, over on the far right, you can see we have links to all of our previous meetings. We do have a few previous meetings on add-ins as well, if you wanted to see some additional presentation topics that we had, or look at some of the previous months that we had. Once again, we do have all of the different discipline notes here that you can either move around or right-click and duplicate to either add questions, comments, any kind of add-ins that are your favorite or that you use regularly, etc. Now, with that being said, I will go ahead and stop my share and we'll move over to Jason. How are you doing, Jason?
Doing okay, thanks. I had to find the mute button. Zoom likes to hop around on me. So
it really does, especially when you go between all of the different, sharing and people presenting and all the different window jumps. So totally understand. How are you doing today?
I am hanging in there. I'm excited for Thanksgiving.
It's creeping up on us, really is.
Yeah, super fast. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen at this point.
Sure can.
Perfect. So thanks.
You're familiar with this model here.
We were talking about this earlier. The architecture is just so gorgeous. We cannot get away from it.
Can't get away from it.
It's really amazing. But yeah, so thanks for having me back. We want to talk about some of the add-ins that CADD Microsystems has developed. So we have developed under the CAD brand about 50 add-ins and what we call utilities, which you could think very closely about what Michael's just talking about as the macros. I'm not going through all 50, don't worry. But beyond that, we also, our development team works on applications for Autodesk directly too, which you might have played with. Those are the BIM interoperability tools. But with that, there's 3 tools specifically that we have that I want to talk about, that I want to demonstrate. Kind of different ranges, they do different things, but I think probably Mike would agree with this. Me personally, I'm not a developer, I'm a hardcode copy paster. But the reason I kind of got to this point was there was something that the software didn't do exactly that I really wanted it to do. So it wasn't coming from the approach of a programmer, it was coming from the approach of finding a solution or finding an opportunity with it. And that's what's driven a lot of our application development, especially for our add-ins. So first and foremost, this takes about 5 seconds to demonstrate, but I'll take a little longer than that. We've got a tool that we call FilterPlus. I'm going to grab all my stuff here in this amazing design.
This is one of my favorite tools, by the way.
This is a one we're big fans of. This is the traditional filter dialog. It's not resizable. You get the categories. It's kind of ugly. We have taken over the filter button right at the top here. So there's nothing new to click on, nothing new to install. But as soon as you click on the filter button, it goes to the other monitor, which I'll pull over. You get FilterPlus. And all this does is it takes the filter dialog and it expands on it. So you can see not only do I have category level, we go all the way down into family, into type. We even go to instance, which is just more there for reference to see the ID. It's not usually practical to select it from here, but obviously, if maybe I don't want all my walls, maybe I just want the exterior walls, let's collapse all those guys. So in this case, I don't need to get every single walls. I can select from that family or type level, which is hugely beneficial right there in the filter dialog, excuse me.
I feel like this is the way people want filter to work out of the box, right?
Usually the question we get is, why isn't this in Revit already?
Right.
We don't know. We're kind of glad it's not, because now we can.
I always say if Revit worked the way we wanted it to, I wouldn't have a job.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, they wouldn't need any of us for that. We've got a couple we call action buttons down here. You know, we found some folks were like going to select and then going to this and going to this and then going to this. It's just kind of a one-click save. So instead of selecting and going to selection box or selecting and hiding in view, I can just click here and it kind of does all that at once. You know, not going to save hours and hours, might trim off a couple minutes every week. But on the other hand, also, it's not going to take you out hours to learn it. If you know the old filter, you know the new FilterPlus as well. So that one's FilterPlus. I apologize as the zoom bar is in my way, and how do I move the zoom bar? There we go. All right, zoom
and
bar.
You can still get to the old filter by going to the right bottom corner, right? By
That's
going
right.
to the filter icon down at the bottom. You got it.
We cannot take over the status bar, but really, why would you want to go to the old?
Why
filter?
would you want to? I mean, I guess if you just wanted to like select all the categories of walls, you just want. Sometimes I'm teaching, you know, like if I'm doing a YouTube video or something, I don't want to necessarily show a tool not everybody has. Right?
That's fair. Yep. You can show everybody if you want. That's fine with me. So the next one I want to talk about is what we call the dashboard. The dashboard, it's not the content. It's like a browser. It's like a browser window right inside of Revit. This is one that there's a funny divider line. It's like either folks are like, oh my gosh, I need that immediately. You're like, yeah, that's fine. I don't need that ever. But I'm going to toggle it on here. You can see it pops up down here. And it is literally just like a browser window that's embedded inside of Revit. What it does beyond a browser window, if I go to this advanced example, this is a PHP page on our website that's being used as a sample. And you can see it's got project name, number, client name, and username. So it is actually pulling data from the Revit file directly into this web page. So the web page is not the dashboard. This browser window is the dashboard. You still have to kind of create the content for it. But we've seen folks use it for like a tip of the day or link directly to their BIM manual or link to, help pages. With the activity you can get right from the project, maybe you have a task list that's based on project. Maybe you have contact information that's based on project. And since this can pull the project number right out of the model, all you need to go is go to the page can read the project number, and it can give you that task list and that other information right there immediately. So beyond that, it works just like a regular browser. We got home, we got reload, we got back, and then we got this little dialog here. This is kind of where you point it to, the page. And, you can turn off the values that you don't want to send. We were talking about kind of security just before. So if you don't want to push that stuff, you want to make sure that doesn't get out, you can turn all that off. And then this is just kind of where the initial location is. Docked windows and the Revit API is a little funky. So you can kind of tell it where you want it to go on startup as well. And these settings can be pushed also from IT or from a BIM manager. So you don't have to come in do all this manually every single time you want to set it up. So that is our dashboard. I'm going to turn that off. I can
see that'd be great, as a BIM manager wanting to share information out to a whole bunch of users. Maybe we, 2023 is out, or whatever it is, right?
And that's who's really got it. This is not really a tool that kind of the typical day-to-day user sees like, oh, wow, it's been the BIM managers and kind of the leaders in that group that see it and see some value and want to kind of deploy it and implement it at that point. So I would have loved it when I was in that world before. I think that's one reason I kind of pushed for it. It's kind of my baby at this point. So don't call my baby ugly. The final add-in I want to kind of talk about, and I am tearing through my time here. WarningsPlus. So if you follow along from FilterPlus, we have now also created WarningsPlus. The old warnings dialog box, which I can't get to anymore because I have WarningsPlus installed, is just kind of old and kind of clunky and not conducive to helping you
actually fixing warnings. Getting rid of the warnings is so impossible.
Yeah. So caveat: we don't help fix the warnings. we make it easier for you to find the warnings that you need to fix. That's kind of our tagline here. So again, we took over the actual warnings button, so there's nothing new for users to learn. And here's WarningsPlus. Way sexier. We got these little icons. It's all resizable. You know, we got big, nice buttons down here. But the big thing it does, it helps cut through the white noise of the warnings. This model is so amazing. There's only 5 warnings. I should probably add more warnings to it for the demos, but you can see the functionality based just with these 5 warnings here. Maybe today, all I'm working on is the roof. So I'm going to filter down to just the roof warnings. Go back and clear that. Maybe I need to work on just the walls today. So I'm going to change my category and filter my category down to just the walls and filter only those there as well. Clear that out. So it can organize them, it can group them, it can filter them. And again, there's some warnings that I'm going to work on today, and it might be tricky for me to find them in that obnoxious warnings dialog box. A couple other things it does here. We've got this ignore button. So it doesn't delete the warning. It doesn't fix the warning, but not all warnings are created equal. There are some warnings I will never, ever care about, you know, type mark duplicate value. I don't care. It's not going to impact the integrity of my model. So we've got an ignore button, and this gives you the option to basically hide that warning in your dialog box. And it expands the functionality so you can hide just for me. I can hide just for me on all my projects. Or if it's a work share model, I can hide this on the model for everybody as well. So I'm going to hide this just for me. You can see it's gone away. If I need to get it back, we've got the ignored warnings up here. It tells me how many there are. I can just click on that. I can unignore it, and I can show ignored. Again, it doesn't delete it, doesn't fix it, but it clears out all that extra warning mess that I just don't care about and I'm not going to worry about. Excuse me. A couple other things that it does that we're pretty happy with. We've got an export. Traditional warnings has an export too. This is what you get when you export warnings from Revit directly. It's an HTML document. It's not organized well. It's kind of weird, especially if you've got hundreds or thousands of warnings there. We go to Excel. So this is the warning report that you can export to Excel. It's got it grouped by the warnings that you see in the WarningsPlus dialog. We've got, you know, category, family, more importantly, element ID. They are all their own unique columns, so I can get my own data out there and make it easier to hunt that all down. The last piece I like to show what it does is, if you remember in warnings, there's a show button. So you can click on the warning and it's supposed to zoom you into where it is and highlight. Sometimes there's just too much stuff to see and it doesn't actually select the element. So we have select and show. And so instead of just zooming into that spot, it actually selects that element as well that I've got highlighted here. So in case I do need to start panning and moving, in case I do need to do anything with it, that element is already selected and I can start kind of messing around with it there. So there you go. Those are the 3 tools I wanted to talk about.
Very cool.
I went fast. Are there any questions?
The one question I have is, can you kind of look at warnings by element so that you can, you know, if one element has 3 warnings associated to it?
So not with WarningsPlus. We actually have another utility that will filter a view and only show you elements with warnings, which might be close to what you're asking there. But yeah, that is not in WarningsPlus. That might be something we could add for the whatever we're on at this point, though.
Right. Just because I feel like with what you were saying, getting rid of some of the noise, I feel like that might be able to help just collapse it in together. But you see, we do have a few questions here. First off, is this something that we can buy from CADD Microsystems, those 3 tools you talked about?
This is absolutely something you can buy from CADD Microsystems, yes.
And you can see that there is the link in the chat, and I believe we have it under Michael's name, or I'm sorry, Jason's name as well, where you can get to the interoperability tools. About the FilterPlus, can you filter or select by work set? I believe you showed by level, or maybe that was by the warnings.
The warning is by level
and work set. Sorry, level and work set. For
no
the
level
filter
and work
select.
set in FilterPlus. That's an interesting thing, though. I'm going to write that down. And I don't think we have work set in WarningsPlus. I think that is simply by what we see here as well, but I can look at it. This is not a work shared model, but I'm pretty sure that category family type, you know, what you see up here is what we've got among all the models there. but I'm writing that down right now.
And then I'm guessing they're talking about the warnings. Can you select filter system elements by system type name? Or maybe that's by the FilterPlus. Can you select/filter system elements by system type or system name?
I don't think so. Basically, what we start with the list is the same list you're going to get from the traditional filter. We just kind of expand on that. And I need some of my MEP brethren to help out. I don't think that shows up in traditional select and filter at that point. So if it's not there, it's not going to be in FilterPlus either.
Got it. Well, keep the questions coming for Jason. WarningsPlus, FilterPlus, amazing tools, especially because they're just so intuitive, right? When you start to use them, it really just, it's like you said, the way that Revit probably you want it to behave, right? Or those dialog boxes the way that you want them to be. So moving on to Richard, it looks like we have a bit of extra time for Richard, which is super exciting. I will tell you, Ideate tools are some of my favorite tools. When I started as a consultant, that is one thing that I would move around from office to office, is getting people to buy the Ideate tools. Ideate Explorer, BIMLink, Sticky, all of the apps, so fantastic. Whenever I meet them at a conference, they're like, you want to come work for us? Are you sure you're the cheerleader situation? So this is actually how I got into Dynamo, really kind of pressing the buttons, figuring out this godlike hand Ideate had, and able to give me all of these additional parameters. And I will say, for some of you guys are wanting some additional features out of the FilterPlus and WarningsPlus tools, hopefully Richard will show us Explorer. Explorer is going to do all those things, isn't it, Richard?
Yes.
And then some.
Wow, I love it. The godlike hand.
The godlike hand. Did you write that one down?
I think I should, yes. All right.
Can't go back once you have the godlike hand, you know?
I'm going to start my little timer here. Maybe it's not that big of a deal, but I will anyway. So can you see the screen?
Sure can.
All right. I'm used to like GoTo where it puts like a highlight around the edge. So it's like, oh, am I presenting or not? They're all each GoTo, Zoom, WebEx, they're all a little bit different, right?
All behave so differently.
Well, thank you so much, Dana and BIMX team, the directors, for having me today. I really appreciate it. I am located up in Boston, so I'm on the East Coast, but not in the Mid-Atlantic region. Actually, I always like to say that this is where, I'm very proud of Boston, and this is where Revit was born. Those of you that know the history know that it was started by two individuals from Parametric Technology Corporation, and the very first office was just outside of Boston. And I worked for Revit Technology for a couple of years before Autodesk acquired it. And then I worked for Autodesk for about 12 years as one of the Revit product managers. And then I've also worked in both large and small architecture firms. So my background is in architecture, but I'm still always, even though Revit has grown immensely in the last 22 years, I always like to point out that the birthplace was right here in my backyard in Boston. So I can tell you where all the people are buried, basically, or all of the the craziness. So Ideate Software creates 6 add-on solutions to Revit. So very hopefully appropriate for the topic today, add-ons or add-ins or plugins. You know, we've kind of changed the terminology sometimes. So we develop an application called Ideate BIMLink, allowing you to extract information from the Revit model, send it to Excel, be able to review or even make changes, and then import that data back into the Revit model. Our Ideate Explorer, as Dana mentioned, is a model browser, but it also has a very robust warnings management system that I'm going to show a little bit of it today. And then our Ideate StyleManager allows you to understand, I call it the building blocks of an element. So for instance, we have a wall, right? But a wall is made up of an object style, line pattern, maybe parameters. All of those building blocks we've kind of lumped together as styles. And so StyleManager helps you manage that and basically say, are these being used in your project? Where do you want to merge them together? And basically sort of manipulate and control them, both in your family environment or your Revit project environment. And then some of you that may be familiar with Ideate Software may not be as familiar with our newest tool called Ideate Automation. So I'm really going to showcase that today, which is basically taking the information or the workflows that Ideate Software helps to streamline and making that very repeatable. So I apologize, Dana, but I'm going to say it's kind of like Dynamo for Ideate Software, but it allows you to script workflows for Ideate Software in a very sort of easy to use, non-programming way. So all of this, we kind of lump into data management, project auditing, model, and data health. So our solutions in this particular, I'll call it bucket of information or category, is around data management. But then we also have another bucket or category of area that we're trying to solve or trying to ease some of the Revit sort of, let's say, downfalls, is around Revit model productivity. So that's where our Ideate Sticky comes into play. That product allows you to link in PDF or Excel files or Word files into your Revit project and keep those up to date. And then our Ideate apps is a collection of 10 productivity tools for all Revit users. Doesn't matter if you're MEP or if you're architecture or if you're structural. These tools are going to help you, for instance, renumber elements very easily or understand the implication of a delete. There's a whole series of sheet and view tools allowing you to duplicate sheets very easily, swap viewports from one sheet to another, align those viewports across sheets and so forth. So we kind of, like I said, we're lumping this into our model productivity. And that's not what I wanted to do. So in the limited time that I had, I thought since we were talking about add-ins, I really wanted to focus on the Revit data management and health check with Ideate Software and the tools that we have available for doing a model health check for Revit. So that first tool, I kind of already introduced it. It's called Ideate BIMLink. It allows you to extract information from the Revit model and send it to Excel. And the first part of it is just the extraction, right? It's all of the in BIM. It's all the parameters and property information. So it could be, information about a particular, let's say, mark value, but it also could be geometric information as far as the width or the height of a door or window. So that could be extracted and exported to Excel. And again, as a review tool, but it can also be used to edit the data and then import that back into Revit. So I have an example of that where we're going to go over here to our Ideate Software ribbon panel, start Ideate BIMLink. And BIMLink has these what we call link definitions that are kind of like schedules. So I'm going to go over here to my health check folder, and I'm going to do a health check views. So I'm going to look at all the views in this project. So it brings up all the properties of the views. You can decide that you want more or less. Again, this is just sort of a template to get you started, and then you can modify it to suit your needs. So I'm going to just keep the defaults and say I'm going to export it to this Excel file that is a health check Excel file. This is something that we also deliver as part of our application or part of BIMLink. So everyone that has BIMLink has access to this health check folder. So you see, I just exported all the view information, but the cool thing about this, and I think either Michael or Jason mentioned this about pivot tables in Excel, we now use pivot tables to summarize the information. So you have all the different view types and you have all the data that can be summarized using pivot tables. But as I also said, not only can we, let's say, review the information, but I can start to modify the information. So I'm going to highlight and basically hide a number of columns here. And what I'm going to do is use the power of Excel to basically build a little formula. So I'm using column AT as my scratch pad, basically. And I'm going to use a formula, and I'm going to add the word or basically the prefix CONF for conference prior to the actual view name. And I'm going to make sure that all that is uppercase. So that formula I'm pulling down and I'm applying it to every single plan view. So here's where I'm copying the information to column D, which is what BIMLink is going to use, which is the actual view name. So now I'm going to do the reverse process. I'm going to import from that change that I just made in Excel. So I'm going to go to my health check folder here, if I can find it right there, and open that up. And I'm going to import from views. And it gives me a summary of all the things that are going to be changed. And I have the ability to review that before I actually do the import. Now, when I hit import, watch what happens over on the project browser. Every single plan view has that prefix of CONF for conference. So just a quick sort of round trip example of exporting something to Excel, making changes, and then importing that back. Now, hold that thought, because what I'm doing, hopefully I'm setting the stage here for Ideate Automation. So that was one model and one export and one round trip. But what if you needed to do that on 5 models and you had 50 links that you wanted to export? So hold that thought, and hopefully I will show that in just a few minutes. So next, Dana's favorite tool, yay, is Ideate Explorer. So Ideate Explorer is our model browser. It allows you to understand every single element in the Revit model. We can actually segregate that model by work set, by level, by category, family, and type. You can select on elements and swap one component to another. With our Ideate Query tool, you have the ability to search on any Revit parameter, even those that aren't available within sort of the default Revit environment. And I'll use an example, like you can search on, let's say, all in-place families.
I was about to say that is one of my favorite things with Ideate Explorer. You can't find those things easily.
You can search on like whether an element is pinned or mirrored, so there's, Revit knows about this information. It's just that a lot of the properties aren't exposed in the properties palette. So we've exposed a lot of those properties that you may be interested in reviewing. And then it does also have a very robust warnings manager, our Ideate Warnings Manager, that allows me to review and fix warnings using the tools basically within Revit. And so again, I'm going to queue this up and basically say, here's the Ideate Explorer. Again, I'll go to my Ideate Software ribbon panel. I can look at elements within the active view or elements for the entire project. And again, I'm looking at, let's say, 35,000 elements. But in this case, I'm going to really just focus on our warnings manager. I can highlight warnings based on red, yellow, or a green. So I can color code them based on their severity. Here, in this case, I say, oh, you know what? I've got 2 floors that overlap. So I'm going to use some tools that basically Revit tools to say, I'm going to isolate those elements. Then using tools in Revit, I'm going to edit the boundary and I'm going to fix that warning. So like Jason mentioned, is like, you don't have to, like the other out of the box Revit tool, you have to, close the dialog. It's kind of clunky. This allows you to keep it open, allows you to review, fix warnings. And you'll notice that now that warning that I fixed is no longer shown. And I have a number of settings that I can do, for instance, of a threshold of settings. And this information can also be exported to Excel, which again, we're going to talk about here in a little bit with our Ideate Automation. So that's just whetting the appetite, hopefully, on some of the things that Ideate Explorer can do. Now, our Ideate apps is a collection of 10 very focused driven tools. Like I said, allowing you to renumber elements, allowing you to understand why something doesn't display with our Ideate X-ray. But today I'm really going to focus on our newest tool that we just developed and released in June called Ideate Annotate. Annotate allows you to review and check the annotation on sheets and views. And the reason that's also important is that's something I'm going to be scripting with our Ideate Automation tool. So in this case, let's go ahead and look at this. Again, going back to the Ideate Software ribbon panel, I'm going to select on Ideate Annotate. It has a very similar look to Ideate Explorer, where I can now sort of browse to all of the 2D annotations in a particular view or a sheet or a series of views or sheets. In this case, I'm going to search for a tag for the toilet. There's the men's toilet 123, and I can double click and it's going to show me that particular piece of annotation, in this case, a tag, right? But the really important thing about Ideate Annotate is, of course, being able to browse, but being able to understand the problems. So I have 83 issues here. A lot of them are annotation clashes. So it's going to show you where annotations are on top of one another. So in this case, I have a door tag that's on top of a room tag, and you can see the two are highlighting there as I click on them. So then I decide to move the the door tag a little bit, and then I'll refresh, and now that's no longer an issue. I can also dismiss the issue if I don't want to refresh, and I can review this sort of information. So like if I have a text note here, let's say I've got, in this case, this stainless steel countertop and this double acting door. It's using the text boundaries and it's getting a conflict. But I have the control to say, you know what, that's certainly not an issue. It's fine. I'm going to dismiss that issue. I can control the sensitivity of that clash as well, of how it's looking at the bounding boxes. I'm also able to review, like if something is a blank tag. In this case, this tag or this room tag is outside of its boundary. So I'm going to bring that back. If you have an empty wall tag or something, it's going to show me that as well. It can show me zero link dimensions. It can show me things that maybe aren't visible in a particular view. As you see there, other not visible. So there's a number of issues that it can review and help me understand. And I can go through just like I can with Ideate Explorer and sort of fix those issues one by one. And then I just wanted to
also allows you to see tags with no value, right? The pesky question mark tags. I feel like that's one of the greatest features of these tools, being able to like tag all and then get rid of all of the ones that are empty.
Exactly. Yeah, Dana's our like biggest cheerleader, basically.
Well, and you talked about this at Built with me.
Yeah.
So we talked about this a little bit already.
So Ideate StyleManager, again, is our tool that allows you to like build all those different, or I should say, manage all the different styles, whether they be, line styles, object styles, materials, parameters, filters, view filters, all those kinds of things that you can control basically and see if they're in use. And if there's something that's like out of whack, you can then basically merge those into a consistent standard. So now I'm going to bring all of this together into Ideate Automation. So what is Ideate Automation? It is, again, I'm sorry, Dana, it's probably the best way to describe it is like, it's sort of Dynamo for Ideate software, but it allows you to script our solutions. And we've actually built, just like with Ideate BIMLink, we've built a number of scripts that are already ready to go that you can use for things like, let's say, creating a PDF sheet set. But it is something that it's kind of our first application that's not part of our overall Ideate software ribbon panel. So what I'm showing there is, there's all of our tools that I just kind of highlighted a few of them, with Ideate BIMLink and Explorer and, the apps tools and StyleManager. This actually sits on the desktop and you're going to, double click it on the desktop. And then you're going to go through and basically tell it that you want to work on certain models and, what process do you want Ideate Automation to run. So again, why this is important is because you can do it, you can have it run at a particular time in the evening, and you can do it not only on one model, but maybe on, 20, 50, 100 models. And so using the Windows task scheduler, I can schedule this to run, like I said, at a particular time that's convenient, or on a computer that is dedicated to this, for instance. It doesn't have to be. It can be on your own computer. It doesn't have to be a server or anything like that, but you could have it on a particular computer. So I highlighted a couple things here. I think it's really important that we're able to create PDFs for a sheet set, as an example. We can also use Ideate BIMLink to have a whole list of the sheets that we might want to review or print to PDF. But today I'm going to be highlighting this exporting key Revit Model Health data. So hopefully what I tried to do is build, again, a little snippet of BIMLink, a little snippet of Explorer, a little snippet of Ideate Annotate to show you how those work and now how we're going to put all of it together. Okay, so here's Ideate Automation. I've kicked it off from the desktop. And so here is where I would go and say, well, I want to manage what files or what models. So I have access to my local models or models on BIM 360 or the Autodesk Construction Cloud. In this case, I'm looking at multiple hubs that we have. So I say, this is my hub for what I call our AD and Ideate Inc. It's going to automatically know the Revit version because that's how it kicks off the Revit version to perform the task that I've told it to do. So now I'm going to go to my local models. I'm going to say create, and here I'm building the script. And the health check, we already have several scripts, like I said, that I can start to use. So I'm going to choose a Revit file. In this case, I'm going to keep it local on my machine. It's a 2023 model. I select that. I pick a location where I want the information to go to, which is my model health folder. And basically I'm saying now next and run this. So now what it's doing is if I did it as a Windows task scheduler, I could kick this off at 2 in the morning, but right now it's running. It actually opens up Revit. It suppresses any pop-up warnings or whatever that's going to come because this is supposed to be running, doesn't need the interaction of a person sitting there. So now you can see it's actually doing an Ideate BIMLink export. Now, not only is it doing one export, it's doing exports on about 30 different links. It's also exporting the warnings data that we looked at earlier, and it's exporting the Ideate Annotate sheet and issues data as well. So it's doing all of that and it's sending it to Excel. So once the process is done, it's going to pop up back to the start screen here and it says, okay, the task is running. Now it's completed. We have a log file, but I'm now going to switch over to the Excel file that was generated and double click on it. So this is like a super advanced version of the one I showed you earlier with just BIMLink. This is now, it has all of the elements that were exported. It also has the view summary I showed earlier, but it talks about here are the work sets, here's imports in place. It has, generic model usage, and I can keep basically looking at all of these different tabs to see all the information. If I scroll over to the right, everything in sort of blue is from BIMLink. Green was the warnings data. So we have the warnings and warnings over time. We have the orange, which is the sheet information. So we have the issues of the annotative issues that were selected. So again, I can review this information very easily, and you see all the view details that came directly from Ideate BIMLink. Now, the important thing about this is you can now take that Excel file and you could then basically plug that into like a dashboard. So you can have, automated and consistent results. So you can run a health check as an example every evening. And then a lot of our customers now are taking that information in Excel and bringing it into Power BI for again, a kind of a dashboard look, like, oh, I've got these warnings kind of aggregated over a series of models, right? Warnings per megabyte, warnings count. What are my warnings over time? What are my top 10 warnings for these models? So I can really sort of break down and review this information, which is quite nice. Here's the warnings over time. And then I totally agree with Jason. I couldn't stress it more. Warnings are so important to fix on a regular basis because they can cause so many issues with a Revit model so you want to be sure that you're kind of going through and understanding where those warnings are. So I'm a little bit over 20 minutes, 21 minutes. I got my timer going, but I just wanted to also highlight a few things about Ideate Software, the company. We are releasing on the last 4 releases of Revit. All of our add-ins, right? Everything is available for Revit 2020 through Revit 2023. We have earlier versions, but those have been archived. We develop all of our software in 6 languages around the world. So we have, of course, English, French, Spanish. We have Japanese, simplified Chinese. I think that I mentioned German. So a lot of the major languages. We have customers all over the world. We are one of the premier Autodesk software development applications. And so a lot of information, even the pricing of all of these solutions are all available on our Ideate Software website. We have hundreds and hundreds of videos showcasing how you would do certain things with Ideate Explorer, how you would work with Ideate BIMLink as an example. And we do partner with Pinnacle, which is an e-learning platform portal that you may be familiar with. So all of our Ideate software information is also on the Pinnacle e-learning portal. So I'd like to see if there are any questions. And like I said, here's the, if there's more information on our website, there's also promotions. Like I said, you can actually look at the cost, and you can buy each one of these software applications a la carte, or you can buy them together as a bundle. And of course, we've made the pricing, I think, very nice for a bundle application. And our Ideate Automation, typically, our customers are using Ideate Automation when it comes to using Ideate BIMLink or Explorer or StyleManager or apps. But you don't have to. You can actually buy Ideate Automation completely on its own, because you can actually extract information from the Revit model about the DW or the Revit family usage, all the Revit families, the size of the families. As I mentioned, you could do PDF information, like extract a PDF sheet set at a particular time every day. So even though it's Ideate Automation is, of course, built around our solutions, it's not necessary that you have Ideate software to run Ideate Automation.
We actually have a question about that Power BI, whether that template is included, or whether you guys could provide that.
We do. If you are a customer, all you need to do is send, actually, I have it up on the screen here. The email is support@ideatesoftware.com. Send an email to support requesting the Power BI template, and we'll send that to you. So it's pretty easy. We have a number of data sets, actually. So if you are an existing customer, we have a data set around Revit revisions. We have another data set for plumbing calculations. We have a massing data set. So most of these are kind of encapsulated in blogs that we have, or information on our online help. But all you need to do is send if you're, like I said, an existing customer, send a message to support@ideatesoftware.com, and we will send you that data set.
And I'll say one of the things that I also love as a BIM manager and someone who's been using Ideate tools for quite some time is that their webinars are so great. They have really wonderful recordings and data on their tools and how to use them. So it's not something that you would need to create as a BIM manager. They have really great resources on top of their tools just being intuitive already.
Well, and I saw there was thank you, Dana. I saw there was a quick question on, and I didn't really, because my Ideate Automation example didn't really have information about Ideate StyleManager, I kind of, glossed over that pretty quickly. And I see there's a question about, can you show the annotation tools? I don't know if maybe they meant the annotation tools within Ideate apps, because with StyleManager, unless you're talking about like looking at text or fonts, like in this case, I can say, oh, well, what text what pieces of text, right? I've got this I'm isolating duplicates. I've got 1/16 Arial, and I've got 1/16 Arial for detailing. So in this case, I can double click to see, are these being used? Okay, this 1/16 for Arial for detailing isn't even used in the model. It's defined, but it's not used. So I could delete it. If there were elements on it, I could actually say, I want to merge one to another. Like in this case, there's this Arial 2, right? And Arial 3. I could say Arial 3, let's merge that with, what is it? 3/16 Arial, right? So I'm merging now every element that is using that piece of text onto the correct 3/16 Arial. And
it looks like a lot of people were saying that PyRevit is their favorite add-in, which I'm not sure that we've had Asan on here. We'll have to have him back. Yeah, but this is a lot of what StyleManager, and it's kind of what Python or PyRevit would allow you to do with getting rid of your view filters that aren't in use and things like that, right?
Yep, absolutely. And PyRevit, it's very good as well. I think that's a great application. But again, there's a difference between sort of some of the scripting or, I should say out of the box tools, but like add-ins where we're building the interface for you, as opposed to some of the things like with Dynamo or Python or even the macros, where maybe you have to do some of the programming it yourself.
Michael, I want to say that you had a conference talk, maybe at Built, on macro versus script, right? Like what the showdown or something, I believe it was the name of the conference talk.
Yeah. Code versus node. Yep.
Code versus node. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of discussions about the hows or why you might use one or the other, right?
Exactly. And each, I think, has their strengths and their weaknesses, right? And I think some of the strengths for an add-in is the fact that, the onus is on a company like ourselves, like Ideate Software, to make sure that we're developing it on each release of Revit, we're testing it, we're making the interface as easy to use as possible. But it's not as flexible as if you created your own Dynamo script or your own macro, you could customize it to exactly what you want to do. We're having to build an application that is in some ways trying to meet the needs of thousands of users all around the world, right? And I think actually Autodesk has that same problem. They're trying to make a platform, a BIM platform that is meeting the needs of, architects, engineers, construction professionals all around the world. And, that's difficult. Whereas, with the add-in or a script, you can be a little bit more specific.
Analogy I like to use is it's like the maker kits. So like I can get a maker kit for an alarm clock, and then I can like build the alarm clock myself, which is like Dynamo. Or I can just go to Target and I can buy like a nicely packaged alarm clock with a radio. It depends on what you're looking for. Do you want the process of making the thing, or do you just want to tell time?
Exactly. Well, and I Dana knows my thought on this too as well. I think that like Dynamo is so awesome when it comes to like geometric studies and doing all kinds of like really specific things for that particular, that are sort of bespoke for that project. But when it comes to like, let's say exporting information to Excel and then back into Revit, I feel like there are so many wonderful add-ins that do that you shouldn't be building a Dynamo script to do that. That's my opinion.
And I'll say Smith Group, we have tons of add-ins, Ideate, of course, all of the full suite of tools. And so whenever that, Ideate can do it for me, I won't create the Dynamo script, right? So it 100% saves me a lot of time, which is how I know about the delete empty question marks. That was definitely, or empty tags, definitely a Dynamo script that I had for a while. So, well, awesome. It looks like that's the majority of the questions that we have. I feel like I know about Model Health better and all these add-ins better. So definitely looking forward to looking into these and how I can use them specifically at Smith Group and some of my teams, and how we can customize that. So thank you guys all so much. That all of these tools are so fantastic.